Good morning, Adams Crusaders. This is Mrs. Brunner. Welcome to your first day of virtual learning. So today for shared reading, we are reading this novel excerpt, which, as you know, just means it's a part of the novel. And the novel is called My Side of the Mountain. We're going to skip about the author, but the background is pretty important, seeing as it's a novel excerpt. We should probably pay attention to what's been happening so far. So it says, in My Side of the Mountain, young Sam Gribley runs away from his home in New York City to live in the Catskill Mountains on his own. With only a few basic tools and the advice of some locals, he does what he can to gather food and prepare shelter before the winter. This excerpt begins in the summer, shortly after Sam has arrived. And then as I'm reading today, I will be annotating, looking for examples of our narrator being prepared and unprepared. All right, here we go. I knew enough about the Catskill Mountains to know that when the summer came, they were covered with people. Although great-grandfather's farm was somewhat remote, still hikers and campers and hunters and fishermen were sure to wander across it. Therefore, I wanted a house that could not be seen. People would want to take me back where I belonged if they found me. I looked at that tree. Somehow I knew it was a home, but I was not quite sure how it was a home. The limbs were high and not right for a treehouse. I could build a bark extension around it, but that would look silly. Slowly, I circled the great trunk. Halfway around, the whole plan became perfectly obvious. To the west, between the two flanges of the tree that spread out to be roots, was a cavity. The heart of the tree was rotting away. I scraped at it with my hands. Old, rotten, insect-ridden dust came tumbling out. I dug on, using my axe from time to time as my excitement grew. So when I was reading, I wasn't sure what flanges meant. So we've got this little one, kind of like an exponent there. So down below it says raised edges at the base of a tree. So basically it's just part of the roots, it looks like. And I know a cavity in your teeth is like a hole in your tooth. So it must be a hole that's in the tree. And that sounds kind of gross. He's scraping it out with his hands. Old, rotten, insect-ridden dust came tumbling out. Although I have to say that's some really good imagery right there. Okay. And thank you for being patient. I am doing this with my fingers, so a straight line is a little bit challenging. All right, let's keep going. With much of the old rot out, I could crawl in the tree and sit cross-legged. Inside, I felt as cozy as a turtle in its shell. Ooh, that's a good simile. I chopped and chopped until I was hungry and exhausted. I was now in the hard, good wood, and chopping it out was work. I was afraid December would come before I got a hole big enough to lie in, so I sat down to think. You know, those first days, I just never planned right. I had the beginnings of a home, but not a bite to eat, and I had worked so hard that I could hardly move forward to find that bite. So I just noticed that he says, you know, those first days, I just never planned right. And I think this is showing a lack of preparation. And also it's showing that he's reflecting back on this. So this part of the story is kind of like a flashback. Let's try writing flashback. All right, that's as good as it's going to get today. And he plans for how he's going to have shelter, but he doesn't have a bite to eat. And all of a sudden, he's exhausted. So that's not a good sign. Furthermore, it was discouraging to feed that body of mine. It was never satisfied, and gathering food for it took time and got it hungrier. Trying to get a place to rest, it took time and got it more tired. And I really felt I was going in circles and wondered how primitive man ever had enough time and energy to stop hunting food and start thinking about fire and tools. I left the tree and went across the meadow looking for food. I plunged into the woods beyond, and there I discovered the gorge and the white cascades splashing down the black rocks into the pool below. So maybe I don't know what a gorge is, but I'm going to use context clues. So it said that there was a white cascade splashing down the black rocks. And I don't know about you, but right off the bat, I am thinking waterfall. So I'm thinking a gorge is basically like an open space with a waterfall, and there's like a pool of water below. I was hot and dirty. I scrambled down the rocks and slipped into the pool. It was so cold, I yelled. But when I came out on the bank and put on my 2 pairs of trousers and 3 sweaters, which I thought was a better way to carry clothes than in a pack, I tingled and burned and felt coltish. I'm going to peek down at the bottom what trousers and coltish are. So trousers are pants, that makes sense. Coltish, like a colt, energetic but awkward. Okay, because he's so cold. So I'm back up here. I leapt up the bank, slipped, and my face went down in a patch of dog-tooth violets. You would know them anywhere after a few looks at them at the botanical gardens and in colored flowered books. They are little yellow lilies on long, slender stems with oval leaves dappled with gray. But that's not all. They have wonderfully tasty bulbs. I was filling my pockets before I got up from my fall. So noticing a couple of things. So he knows that it's okay to eat these. And I'll be honest, as far as surviving in the wilderness, I don't think I would know that dog-tooth violets are edible. So this shows preparation. However, before that, as far as going to the gorge and then kind of falling into the water, he probably should have been a little bit more careful. So that shows that he's a little unprepared. I'll have a salad type lunch, I said as I moved up the steep sides of the ravine. I discovered that as late as it was in the season, the spring beauties were still blooming in the cool pockets of the woods. They are all right raw, that is, if you are as hungry as I was. They taste a little like lima beans. I ate these as I went on hunting food, feeling better and better, until I worked my way back to the meadow, where the dandelions were blooming. Funny, I hadn't noticed them earlier. Their greens are good, and so are their roots, a little strong and milky, but you get used to that. So once again, our narrator notices the dandelions. He knows that they're edible and what they taste like. So here's another example of him being prepared as far as surviving out in the wilderness. All right, that is where we are going to end for today. I hope you enjoyed your first day of virtual learning. Don't forget to answer the question on Classroom. Bye.